I thank the chair. Appreciate the gentleman from appearing. Just a couple of questions for the chairman. I think you just articulated some of the things I wanted to make sure was clear for the record about what we're talking about here. Under current law, but I want to make sure it's clear for everyone to understand. Under current law, if a state wants to ensure that it is only a citizen voting, does that state face barriers to ensuring that that is the case?
100%, that's an accurate statement. They're not allowed, they're actually prevented from asking applicants for documentary proof of U.S. citizenship under current law, and that's the Supreme Court's decision in 2013 of Arizona versus Intertribal, their review of NVRA and federal preemption.
And as such, has that caused problems, for example, with respect to Arizona, where Arizona currently basically operates two separate systems, where they register individuals checking proof of citizenship for state and local elections, but they, on the federal side, do not, because of this barrier put in place prohibiting them, in essence, due to the court's interpretation of NVRA, prohibiting them from being able to check citizenship. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes.
And what we're endeavoring to do here, which obviously was debated and amended in committee, if I'm correct, I believe that the ranking member's amendment was offered in committee and failed 6-1.
That's accurate.
And there was a significant number of Democrats not present at that hearing.
6-1 indicates that.
Right. And so that amendment was offered. There was, at least debate with the one Democrat who was present, given that there were no other Democrats present at the hearing. But with respect to what we're trying to do with this legislation, we're trying to first make sure that barrier is brought down, but go a step further, given the extent to which we now have, and I would ask the chairman if he agrees with me, increasing evidence that there are jurisdictions seeking to register non-citizens to vote, at least at allegedly the state and local level. But wink, wink, nod, nod, don't worry, we'll never have those registrants being involved in federal voting. But the truth is, there's an expansive view in Oakland, San Francisco, New York, tried to happen here in the District of Columbia, right? We had a vote on that here in the House. So would the gentleman agree what we're seeking to do is to do what many states do right now and attempt to do, but are prevented because of the Supreme Court opinion, require a documentary proof of citizenship to be able to vote in federal elections, to be able to address this problem?
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what we're trying to do with this legislation, is allow states to have that opportunity to provide documentary proof of citizenship. In fact, require it. And I think you correctly note this administration is working aggressively to roll out a secretive plan on voter registration. In fact, they put forward an executive order 14019 requiring every agency to put forward a strategic plan as to how they were going to help get out the vote in effect. And they won't provide us with that strategic plan. I've subpoenaed the 15 administration officials to get that, because I think taxpayers deserve to know how their taxpayer dollars are being used. So you have this administration working in secret to try to roll out and utilize the federal government to get a get out the vote operation. We're, in contrast, just trying to make sure that U.S. citizens are the ones who are voting in U.S. elections.
Gentlemen, aware with respect to the problem we're identifying that our colleagues have suggested does not exist, that there is a significant amount of evidence of people who are non-citizens voting in our elections. A study, for example, professors at Old Dominion University and George Mason University from 2014, finding that non-citizens participate in U.S. elections, and that this participation has been large enough to change meaningful election outcomes, including electoral college votes. Are you aware of that study?
Yes, and we've looked at a number of examples in our committee hearing. I actually think one of the most pertinent examples is the congressional review of the 46th congressional district race in California in 1996, where they actually did a retrospective analysis on who voted. And it was documented that 624 non-citizens voted in that election. And if we extrapolate that across 435 House districts, or you just look at it at a House district where we know often House races are determined by less than 600 votes. We have a colleague from Iowa where it was 6 votes. And so there is documentary proof of non-citizens voting in U.S. elections, and this is why your legislation is so essential.
And it's true that there are multiple states in which in the electoral college process are states that have been determined by thousands of votes, right? I mean, 10,000 votes in Georgia, less than that in certain other states, 15,000, you know, so those votes are meaningful.
In my home state of Wisconsin, a landslide is 20 or 30,000 total votes. I mean,
Right.
a few thousand votes here or there can swing any battleground state.
The study that I quoted from Old Dominion George Mason estimated that 6.4% of non-citizens voted in the 2008 election, which would represent 1.2 million non-citizen votes cast. I do want to, with all respect, correct my friend from South Carolina. There was a report out of Texas of a number that he quoted about 95,000. He said almost 100,000. That number was later corrected to be 25,000. There was a mistake in the counting. But for the record, there were 25,000 in Texas in that report. Virginia last year removed 1,481 voter registrants for non-citizen status. North Carolina conducted a study in 2014 with over 1,400 registered voters. In 2024, an audit carried out in Ohio flagged 137 individuals. There's list after list after list. And, I would note that there are examples, I assume my colleague is aware of, certain of our Democrat colleagues, one in particular in January 2024 saying, quote, "I need more people in my district just for redistricting purposes," in a direct response to the border crisis. Does the gentleman remember that
Very much so.
statement? In other words, the idea that there's not a problem is belied by the facts. The idea that there's not a problem with respect to our border is, of course, belied by the facts. And I'm always entertained by this notion that, well, it's illegal already. Why do you guys need to do this? Well, number one, then what are you worried about? Number two, if it being illegal solves the problem, then the fact that it is illegal for people to enter the United States, you would think would solve this rather enormous problem of millions of people being released into the United States, correct?
That's spot on.
Yet here we sit. I would note, in addition, that we've got some people raising issues about that this will cause a burden to those who wish to vote for citizens. Is the gentleman aware is that the list of items that we put in the legislation mirrors numerous existing state laws? For example, that bastion of wing nuttery, the state of Massachusetts. The language that we put in the bill is very similar to that which is put forward by the state of Massachusetts. Does the gentleman agree?
Yep.
And the documentation that we talked about, we have provisions replete in the bill to allow people and allow administrators to create mechanisms, for example, for women, spouses who change names, individuals who want to be able to provide a different route to be able to provide evidence if they run into a barrier with, coming up with a passport or a real ID, or in the military examples. Is that correct?
The EAC opportunity to provide that guidance to states is a key component of the bill.
And a last, I think, important point, which is the extent to which this is very inherently a role for Congress and a federal issue. The extent to which the Constitution very much contemplates that, of course, the time, place, and manner of holding elections, shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof, but the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations, right? Then you follow the jurisprudence and you figure out, okay, there's some debate about whether the how versus the who, that question which the court has raised. In this case, of course, the Constitution contemplates that the naturalization clause puts Congress, frankly, the court has placed it maybe even higher than intended, Congress at the full center of making determinations about all things naturalization. So the combination of the elections clause and the naturalization clause, combined with the numerous amendments, the 15th, 19th, 24th, 26th, all referencing, quote, the right of citizens of the United States to vote, I think clearly demonstrates the power and the duty of Congress to act in this case. Would the gentleman from Wisconsin agree?
I agree.
And so at the end of the day, we have the power, we have the duty, we have legislation to resolve a very real and growing problem. We have 80+% of Americans wanting us to solve said problem and guarantee that only citizens vote. We have put forward legislation to do that under the powers that we have under the Constitution. We are solving a real barrier to states being able to conduct their duty to do this and providing a mechanism for federal elections only, a requirement that it be consistent across the country. Is that a fair characterization?
It's fair.
I yield back.